Hi. On to study number 15. I took a look this week at the family's return from Egypt to Nazareth. And this week I actually ended up researching a couple of points of apologetics because there are some maybe seemingly conflicting accounts here. So we're back into some of the content that's going to have passages from multiple Gospels now. So I took a few verses from the end of chapter 2 in Matthew, as well as chapter 2 of Luke. So in Matthew, we see that the family returns to Nazareth from their exodus to Egypt. And then in Luke, the passage where it says the family returned to Nazareth, that is actually the very next verse after the family had taken Jesus as a baby to the temple to be presented and to do their sacrifices and various rituals. So it seems as though when Luke puts that verse, the very next thing after the family had fulfilled all of that was according to the law, they went back to their hometown in Nazareth. And it seems like that would be immediately following. So I looked into that a little bit. Apparently, I guess people who study antiquities and things like that say that a lot of ancient historians would abbreviate timelines by just omitting large sections of time that way. So Luke's statement didn't explicitly say immediately, and it didn't necessarily have to mean immediately. It could have been after some time had passed from when Jesus' family visited the temple. They then ended up back in their city of Nazareth. So there's no explicit contradiction, and in the absence of that, there's no real solid argument to say that Luke's passage specifically is, I guess, against what Matthew's account says about the exodus to Egypt. Another thing that I focused on was the quote that seems to be in the Matthew passage, where Matthew references the Old Testament and says that the prophets said that the Messiah would be a Nazarene. That is not a direct quote from anywhere in the Old Testament. So in researching some of that, it looks like because we had already looked at Nazareth was so well known for being corrupt and despised and full of bad people and bad things, the prophecies were that the Messiah would be despised and would come. He would be a root out of dry ground. And so Nazareth actually was the perfect place for that, and was so much so that it was even being a Nazarene was synonymous with being despised. And so almost as if I were to say a good Samaritan, well, if there had been a prophecy that said someone would be kind and helpful and put others before themselves, then later we could say this fulfilled the prophecy that that person would be a good Samaritan. So anyway, that's kind of resolved that issue for me as well. And I also finally took a look at the history of when Herod's son gained power after Herod died. I had thought that Jesus spent some time in Egypt, but actually it looks like he really didn't, because based on the timeline of when Herod died, Jesus would probably still have only been 2 years old. So just learning some more stuff as I'm going along, and take a look at the things I picked up. Enjoy.